So it's a great pleasure for me to come to our third panel, and the third panel that really could be something very specific and special, because it's not every day that we can welcome two guests from outside the country that will have a decisive role for European defense and security politics and policies, not only in the coming months, but in the coming years. It's a great pleasure, and please welcome with me. I do not want to go into details of their career because everybody knows it, but it's a great privilege for me to welcome one of the most outstanding and well-known politicians and stateswomen of Europe, Ursula von der Leyen,
Thank you.
Minister of Defense, or for Defense in Germany.
Thank you so much.
Very important for defense politics, of course, is one function within the Commission that more or less can present us the man or the person who stands for military politics and for military activities within the Union. And this is the Director General of the European Military Staff. Since 2016, we have a new commander. It is a man coming from Finland. He has made his career. I also do not want to tell too much about his career. He had an outstanding military career, and this was the basis for his nomination in this important function, because at least for the insiders, it was already clear that he will have a new field and new responsibilities, even if you compare it with his predecessors. I really want to welcome Lieutenant General Esa Pulkkinen. And the third one, everybody is knowing here in Sofia, the former defense minister and now advisor, military and defense advisor to the Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Anu Angelov. Heartily welcome also in your home city. We do have the privilege to spend maybe 10 minutes more as was foreseen in the schedule, but we started also a little bit late. And so far I do not want to lose too many words, but I would like to ask Mrs. Minister to give us her presentation, to let us listen to her view on the future development of European defense politics. Please,
Thank you.
Mrs. Minister.
Yes, thank you so much, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you very much for the invitation to this conference. It's the very first time in my life that I'm here in Bulgaria. It has been wonderful to fly in and to see this country from above. So future visits will lead me through the country. I think it is the absolutely right time to hold this conference, and it's the right place to hold this conference because this region is a crucial, an essential part of our Europe. And I can only commend Bulgaria for its presidency, which is going brilliantly, and I've been part of those who had the honor and the privilege to attend the different meetings by the Bulgarian presidency, so outstanding. And I'm looking forward now, of course, to the defense minister meeting we have today and tomorrow here in Sofia. The times we live in are very vulnerable. You all know the security environment, but I just want to give a few brief looks at what is surrounding us. We know that in Ukraine we have an unresolved conflict simmering for years. International rules have been broken. In Syria, a civil war is raging for more than 7 years now, killing and displacing thousands and thousands of people. We've seen, for for example, Germany, the United Kingdom, or the United States, we've been witnessing that hackers have been breaching our parliaments or our government computer networks. And we all know what the aim is. The aim is to manipulate and to destabilize our democratic countries and societies. We have seen within the last years in the security surrounding emergency meetings of the United Nations taking place on an almost daily basis. But the bitter part in it is that they often end without any tangible results. In other words, they are symptomatic for the international community's self-imposed deadlock we have at the moment being. And at the same time, we see that our free and open societies are challenged from within. And this is a difficult mixture we have. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I can only commend you for this conference because it's more important than ever before that we stand up and we take on the task to present new approaches to, as you call it, create a more resilient and secure Europe, which is the title of this conference. So how can we become more resilient? How can we protect and defend our democracies? How can we strengthen the international order and the rule of law? Well, there are many different things that have to be done, but one thing is clear. None of us can do it on its own, alone. We need to work together. And I think if you look at the polls, for example, within Europe, that the citizens of Europe quite rightly expect the governments and they expect the European Union to act quickly and with confidence. And they expect us to have something like a European security and defense union. But we all know by experience that for that we need at least structures, we need procedures, we need capabilities, and we need interoperability. If I look at the part in Europe where the facts have been till today, well, it's not too beautiful what I see, because the fact is that we are pretty fragmented as European member states. You know the numbers. Europe operates 17 different main battle tanks. Our American friends just one. We are flying 20 different types of combat aircrafts, almost as many as we have member states. Our American friends only 6. And you all know that you need to train each pilot or each technician on this specific sample. So we have 20 times differently trained pilots, technicians, maintenance, spare parts. What a fragmentation, what an inefficiency we do have. In other words, we Europeans had to reorganize ourselves in defense. This is not only what our people expect us to do, but also our transatlantic friends. This is one of the reasons why last year, in December, we took the first steps towards a European Defense Union. I want to make very clear that a European Defense Union is no competition to NATO. It is complementary. Or with other words, NATO will always be collective defense without any doubt. And the European Union will never be a military alliance in itself. But, and this is the difference, the European Union must be able to take action in areas where it affects only Europe. We must be able to tackle problems, to solve problems when they are in our interest. And nobody else will take these problems away or tackle these problems for us. I give an example. This is our neighbor continent, Africa. I do not see NATO there, but I do see a need for a European Union and an answer the European Union has to give for destabilizing activities, for example, in our neighborhood. So it's in our utmost interest to get organized and to form a European Defense Union. Let me briefly talk on the main three pillars we have at the moment being. You know them. It's PESCO, it's CARD, and it is the European Defense Union. PESCO, Permanent Structured Cooperation. I would say this is the framework around the European Union. I'm very grateful to the wise men and women who put that in the Lisbon Treaty, very wise men and women, because they foresaw what was necessary. This is a binding frame where right now 25 members of the European Union have agreed on binding commitments so that we jointly shoulder the tasks that go beyond the capabilities of individual nations. In other words, we jointly work on projects that we can only tackle together as Europeans. At the moment being, we have 17 so-called PESCO projects. So there is the frame, and within the frame are the different PESCO projects. Not every member state has to be part of every project. I'll give you an example. Germany, for example, is taking the lead for 4 different projects. This is a European medical command. Whenever there is a crisis and there's a mission to be brought forward, we need the medical part in it. So a European medical command will always be needed. A combined logistic hub. This is the same. You cannot go on any kind of mission if you do not have a logistic in the back that is functioning and working between the different European member states. Or, for example, a center of excellence for European training missions, or the European Crisis Response Forces, just to name 4 of the projects. We are also co-sponsoring this project that is sponsored by the Netherlands. It's called Military Mobility. The experts here in the room do know you can have fantastic plans for specific actions or missions, but if you are not able to move your troops and the armament through Europe rapidly, well, it's gonna be a plan and never be reality. So this is one of the main pillars we're working on. These 17 projects were just the start. We implemented them in December last year when we started with the European Union and the PESCO framework. Now, of course, we have to keep the momentum. We have to fill them with life. We have to implement them. This is one of the main topics we're going to discuss tomorrow and today within the defense ministers meeting here in Sofia. The second pillar, we call it CARD. CARD is the planning process. This is crucial. We need transparency about who is doing what. Who has what kind of gaps? A few minutes ago, I was talking about the 20 different aircrafts we have, or the 17 different main battle tanks we do have in Europe. This is a symptom of not knowing who is doing what, but even worse is if we do not know where the gaps are, what we do not have in common in the European Union. Therefore, this new so-called CARD process, the planning process, is crucial for us as Europeans in the European Defense Union to plan together and to develop together, or to buy together, the systems of the future. And there's a second part in it. We need full transparency with our non-EU NATO member states. So what we are working on very hard is to harmonize the 2 planning processes of the NATO members, NATO partners, and the member states of the European Defence Union. Because as I stand here, I have one single set of forces, and I'm part of NATO, of course, collective defense, and I'm part of the European Defence Union. I have one single set of forces. So there is a vast interest that there's full transparency between the European Defence Union and NATO in the planning process so that we can keep on going in the future. And for that is interesting and important the third pillar, which is the European Defence Fund. That's where the money is. Because if we want to plan and buy or develop together in the future, we need common money. This is the European Defence Fund. It allows us to break new ground, I think, in terms of common funding. I will not go into details. We can go in details later on, but the main part in it is it has Commission money, it has Member States money, and it is focused on developing together common European projects, like, for example, the Eurodrone. We're developing right now the Eurodrone. It's the pilot project in the European Defence Fund. Part of it are at the moment being France, Spain, Italy, and Germany. Others are invited. And therefore, defense will have a share in the European budget for the first time ever. All those who are experts in European terms know that this is phenomenal. In the past, it was as if defense never existed in Europe because it was not part of the budget. From now on, with the European Defence Fund, defense as an own topic will be part and have a share in the European budget for the first time ever. Second, with the European Defence Fund, of course, we as Europe and its member states, we are providing very strong financial incentives to all of us to go into a deeper cooperation and technological innovation together. And therefore, this will enhance Europe's strategic autonomy and will give us the freedom and the ability to act where it's in our interest. Last point. I think we learned our lessons from the crises of the recent years. And we know only if we speak with one voice, only then the European voice will be heard, be it in Europe, be it internationally. So we have a vast interest to really coordinate our actions. I often put it because for us it's very important to debate the relation between the European Defence Union and NATO. In the words that I say, we want to become more European, and at the same time, we want to remain transatlantic. I think this is the motto for all of us. Become more European, be a strong European pillar within NATO, but remain NATO too. In the long-term perspective, and with your introductory words, you said that our American friends expect us to move forward and to get more organized. The long-term perspective, I think we have, with the European Defence Union, embarked on the road towards an army of Europeans. Take care, this is not a European army. A European army would expect us to have one European command, which is not the case. But I think we're going to move forward step by step into an army of Europeans. What is it? We know it already, partly, because we have already started. It's national armed forces that continue to exist with their respective national features, but they are closely integrated. And I give you some examples. For example, we have parts of the German and Dutch army and navy units that are being integrated already. So if we move on together in the Dutch and German Navy and the Dutch and German Army. I told you about the Eurodrone. Of course, we will work with the Eurodrone in a European component. But there are other projects that we know, like Slovakia is coordinating the PESCO project, indirect fire support, for better and more mobile artillery support in multinational operations. We know that several Eastern and Southeastern European countries have already joined. Or the member states of the Visegrad Group have established a cooperation on defense and security that is most visibly by contributing a European battle group. There you are already within a small sample of army of Europeans. So this is the nucleus from which it starts. Or we know, for example, in NATO's larger formation, within the framework nations concept, we're receiving broad support for the larger formations from partners from this region here, from Bulgaria, from Croatia, from Romania, just to name some. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, all these European efforts, they are not an end in itself, in themselves. They help us to increase the operational readiness of our armed forces. That's what it's all about, operational readiness. They enhance mutual trust. This is what transparency brings along. And thus we are creating resilience. The better we know each other, the closer we work together, the more we are able to act when a crisis hits, so that people see Europe as acting, the more the resilience within Europe will grow. And we are creating a Europe that is capable to protect and to act, a Europe that is able and willing to take on its responsibility. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Minister, thank you so much for this clear picture you gave us, your vision and your view about the status and what should come next.